Right. So for the multiple choice question, right? If you select the right answer and then you click on grade, it highlights it green. You get the green check mark next to the answer. But if you selected the wrong choice, right, it displays your choice here down below. If you click on grade, it highlights the correct answer as green, but it highlights the wrong answer red and the X button red. Here gives you an example of what you might use for the component. Now, so all that is the client side, right? This is all the Angular side. Now, on the server side, we need to create a Node.js server that allows us to retrieve data, be able to find all the quizzes, find a given quiz by its primary key, and then implement that in a separate service file that can be used from anywhere, right? In particular, it's going to be used from a controller, right? Here I've put the data for the quizzes. I'm suggesting that you put the data in a separate JSON file, right? And then you can load it dynamically from your service, right? And then host it and send it back to whoever uses it. So that's the service part, right? That is going to have the CRUD operations, right? And for this assignment, the only two CRUD operations that we are requiring are read operations, right? Be able to retrieve all the quizzes, retrieve a particular quiz by its primary key, and we are suggesting this data. Now, this data right now is going to be hard-coded in these JSON files, but certainly eventually this is going to live in a database, right? In Mongo, and that's going to be the topic for next week. Right now, it's going to live in these JSON files. Right. So we're going to expose this service. We need the web part of a web service. So this is a service. Okay. Notice that it's only JavaScript and JSON data. We're going to expose that service used through a web API. So this is the web part of the service of a web service, right? And to do that, we're going to implement a controller and quiz controller server, which is going to expose two API endpoints, right? One that's going to allow us to retrieve all the quizzes, and one that's going to allow us to retrieve a particular quiz. Right, and I believe we've already started implementing that in our last time we met, and we'll revisit that today. The controller is going to use the service we just built. It's going to import it, and then is going to implement these two get operations, right, written on top of the Express library app. Then it'll use your endpoints are going to use, your controller will use the service to retrieve all the quizzes or retrieve a particular quiz, and then send it back to the client using JSON. For the question service, we're going to have a separate service, right, under question service server. And for this one, we're only going to have a single CRUD operation, only one single read, right? We're going to retrieve the questions for a quiz. Notice that might make no sense to retrieve all the questions, right? Because if you have many questions for many quizzes, right, it makes no sense to just jumble them up, right? Instead, it only makes sense within the context of a particular quiz. So anyway, so this one is going to iterate over an array that we give you that lives on the questions JSON. That lists all the quizzes across all the questions across all the quizzes. Each question has a unique identifier, a unique ID, but they belong to a particular quiz. So this is a question for these quizzes, right? So quiz 2, 3, 4 looks like it has quiz 2, 3, 4. It has 3 questions, whereas question 3, 4, 5 has only 2 questions, and then quiz 1, 2, 3 only has a single question. Okay. Now the questions have a specific schema, right? They all have a primary key. They all have a title. They all have the parent quiz that they belong to. They all have a question. What is the question, right? So, for instance, this question is, JPA stands for Java Persistence API, and you have to answer either true or false, right? The type is here, true or false, and the correct answer is true, right? The other type of question that is available is the multiple choice question. For the multiple choice question, we have a lot of properties that are the same as the true false question, right? We have the ID, the title, the quiz ID, the question, the correct answer. But we have an additional attribute called choices that is just an array of string of all the correct. So all the choices from which you have to choose one. Okay, so anyway, so here they are. There's tons of questions for different quizzes. Right, so that's the question service. For the controller, we're going to expose the following endpoint. The endpoint is that you give me the ID of the quiz, and then I'll return to you the list of questions for that one quiz. And here's an example how you might go about that. You're bringing all the service, and then the controller will use that service, right, to fetch the question for the given quiz ID that is coming from the URL, and then just returns all the questions. Make sense? From the now to wrap this up into one single application, we're going to create a file called server.js. We're going to implement a JavaScript server, right? That's going to listen for incoming requests. Oops. No. And in particular, we care about this one request, right? Requests, I'm sorry, that go out to either the quiz controller or the question controller. So we load both of them, right? We load first the express library. We load each one of the controllers, right? And we pass as argument the app, right? The application that contains a reference to the the Express library, right, that allows us to communicate through HTTP. Also here, we have added support for CORS. This is how you configure CORS. You will need CORS because just like we needed it between React and Java. Same thing. We're going to need CORS from Angular and Node.js. Okay, so this is how you configure it, saying that we're allowing queries from anywhere. Right, deliverable. Right, this obviously needs to run on a remote server. Provide the GitHub repositories, the URLs to this being deployed in a remote server. Right, and the TAs, what they're going to do, they're going to clone down your project and test it locally. Okay. Yes. Yeah. No. You'll need to create a release. I'll add that for the deliverable. Yeah. It's implied, but yes.